What happens when the quietest girl in school gets shoved in front of a crowd and doesn't break, doesn't back down, and doesn't swing? At 16, Alana Brooks wasn't just another student. She was trained, focused, and ready for the moment no one saw coming. What unfolded in under 10 seconds flipped the power dynamic of an entire school and sparked a nationwide debate. This isn't a fight video. It's a story about poise, perception, and the kind of strength that doesn't need to raise its voice. At Monroe Central High, the lunch period was never just about food. It was social theater status games played out beneath fluorescent lights, where students performed the roles they thought would protect them or elevate them. On a Thursday that felt like any other, a confrontation broke that illusion. 16-year-old Alana Brooks, a quiet black student with a book tucked under her arm and earbuds in her bag, entered the crowded cafeteria scanning for an open seat. The table she usually preferred tucked by the far window, beneath the humming vent, was already claimed. She shifted her path toward a half-filled table near the center of the room. But a backpack lay stretched across the bench, like a keep-out sign. The bag belonged to Kellen Marks, a senior with a buzz cut and a jacket that said varsity soccer. Everyone knew Kellen. He wasn't the kind of bully who left bruised. She preferred pressure, sarcasm, stares. Silent rules. He ruled by posture, not punch. And today his rule was challenged by a girl who asked him calmly to move his bag. To Kellen, this wasn't just a seat, it was his territory. And Alana, by not shrinking, violated the script. His smirk faded. His voice got louder, more performative. He didn't see a girl looking for a place to scythe, saw a challenge to his authority. What Kellen didn't know was that Alana wasn't new to discomfort. She'd been training in self-defense since age 13. After an incident in a public park shifted how she moved through the world. Her confidence wasn't loud, but it was there, anchored in experience, reinforced by drills that taught her how to redirect threats without escalation. In that cafeteria, beneath the glare of unblinking LED lights and dozens of student eyes, something changed. Kellen shoved her shoulder a power play designed to embarrass. But what followed wasn't retaliation. It wasn't chaos. It was precision. Within 10 seconds, Alana responded with calm, calculated motion. She didn't throw a punch. She didn't yell. She used his force against him, pivoting, shifting, and letting his imbalance become his downfall. The sound of Kellen landing on the tile floor echoed louder than any insult he'd thrown that day. Phones captured it. Students gasped. But behind the viral moment was something deeper, a quiet refusal to be made small. Before she ever stepped into that cafeteria standoff, Alana Brooks had already survived more complex battle zones that didn't go viral, that left no witnesses, and didn't make the school hallway whisper. At 13, Alana had an experience that forever changed the way she moved through public spaces. It happened on a warm Saturday at a local park in Tempe, Arizona. A man followed her for a few minutes too long, said something inappropriate, made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with running. She got away, she told her mom, and everything shifted. Her mother, Chandra Brooks, a trauma nurse at the local hospital, didn't waste time. The following week, Alana was enrolled in a self-defense program, not a casual karate class. This was focused, pressure-tested training designed to prepare, not entertain. Krav Maga, taught in a windowless gym by instructors who didn't care about excuses or trophies. They trained her like someone who might need to survive. Alana didn't fall in love with the discipline at first. It was hard, repetitive, intimidating. But something in her kept showing up. It wasn't just about learning to throw a punch. It was about posture, awareness, control, knowing when to move and when to stay still, how to breathe when someone gets too close, how to speak without shouting, how to stop something before it spirals. By the time she turned 16, Alana had already spent over 500 hours in training. She could defend against grabs, throws, chokes. But the thing she valued most was what happened off the mental rewiring. Her reactions slowed. Her fear didn't disappear, but it stopped controlling her. At school, Alana never advertised her skills. She didn't flex in gym class or post sparring clips online. Her confidence was quiet, internal. But it shaped the way she walked down the hallway, the way she made eye contact, the way she didn't rush to fill silence. People thought she was just shy. In reality, she was listening, watching, measuring. Kellen Marks, the cafeteria antagonist, had long thrived off the school's unspoken rule: the loudest wins. Teachers rarely called him out directly. Classmates tolerated his sarcasm. Most of the time, he made himself untouchable, not through respect, but through spectacle. But what the school never saw or never looked close enough to see was how boys like Kellen were enabled. Over and over. A backpack on a bench wasn't just a placeholder. It was a territorial signal. The shove wasn't spontaneous. It was learned behavior, a test, one he'd never expected to fail. Alana's strength, by contrast, had been forged through contradiction. She was black, female, and soft-spoken in an environment that rarely rewarded those traits. Expectations boxed her in before she even had the chance to define herself. Teachers often assumed she was doing fine because she didn't complain. Students misread her quiet as submission. But Chandra taught her early that silence didn't mean surrender. In their apartment, modest but well-kept, there were no lectures, only lived lessons. When the electricity flickered, Chandra taught resilience. When her brother Malik got into trouble defending a classmate, he taught her about consequence. "Pick your moments," he told her once. "But when you pick, don't flinch." The family couldn't afford much, but what they had in abundance was intention. Dinner was made, even if late. Rides were offered, even if inconvenient. Love was practiced in action, not just words. That upbringing gave Alana something rare in teenagers' emotional discipline. She didn't just know how to defend herself. She knew when it mattered. Her instructors had a phrase: "Don't win the fight, end it." That philosophy stayed with her. It's what kept her still when Bryce now Kellen got loud. What kept her hands down when his went up. What allowed her to move only when the situation required it, and no further. And so, when students pulled out their phones to record her redirecting Kellen's aggression, what they didn't capture was all the years that built up to that moment. They didn't see the long hours on blue mats, the early rides home from school, the night she came home sore but satisfied. What they saw was a girl who didn't lose control, didn't lose balance, and didn't lose herself because she had already done the work. Her power was reaction. It was readiness. The sound of a cafeteria never truly dies down. It pulses clatters of trays, sneakers squeaking on waxed floors, laughter that spikes and fades. But on that day, in the middle of third lunch at Monroe Central High, a different kind of silence settled in, sharp, expectant, electric. Alana Brooks was already seated when it began. Kellen Marks still hadn't let it go. What should have ended with a moved backpack had become a performance. He turned to his friends, threw out lines meant to sting, raised his voice like a street corner comic needing validation. But Alana didn't play along. She read her book, calm, upright, focused. That unnerved him more than any comeback. 5 minutes in, the whispers started. A few phones quietly rose. Not unusual, students filmed everything these days. Fights, pranks, meltdowns, all clipped to 10 seconds and posted by 7th period. But this time, they didn't know what they were waiting for. They just knew something was about to happen. Kellen stood, pushed his tray aside, stared at her like she was the only thing disrupting his carefully controlled universe. "You think you're better than me?" Alana looked up. Not defensive, not confused, just present. "I'm sitting," she said. "That's it." The simplicity of her tone only made his anger swell. The showman in him wanted escalation. Something messy, something loud. Instead, Alana gave him nothing to grab onto. No fear, no raised voice, just steady eyes and hands on her lap. That's when he did it. He leaned in and pressed his palm against her shoulder just hard enough to test her balance, just public enough to mark the moment. And that's when time seemed to fold in on itself. She moved. Not fast, not flashy, but with precision. Her weight shifted back, one foot anchored, one shoulder dipped. She let his force slide past her rather than stop it. Then, with her left hand, she caught his wrist. Her right hand guided his elbow, and with a subtle pivot just, 2 step-she's center of gravity turned against him. Kellen stumbled. Hard. His knees gave out first. Then his back hit the tile. A tray clattered nearby. And just like that, he was on the floor. The entire cafeteria paused. A soft exhale from somewhere near the vending machines sounded louder than anything else in the room. He wasn't hurt, just winded. But his ego? That shattered before he hit the ground. Phones caught it, from 3 angles. In one, you could see Alana's hands never close into fists. In another, her eyes stayed on him the whole time. Focused, aware. In the third, students in the background froze mid-bite, stunned that something so controlled could upend someone so loud. Kellen scrambled to his feet, his face red, his mouth open, but no words came, not the ones he thought would land, not when half the room had already seen how easily he lost control. "You think that was funny?" he barked. Alana blinked once. "Are you done embarrassing yourself?" A ripple ran through the room. It wasn't quite laughter, not cruelty, more like relief. Like the air had finally cracked and everyone could breathe again. For a moment, Kellen looked like he might try again, but the monitors were moving now, 2 of them, pushing through the crowd. A student near the back pointed. Another whispered something to a teacher just entering the room. Kellen turned and left, brushing past a group of juniors who parted like water. Alana didn't follow, didn't smirk. She just picked up her book and turned a page, her posture relaxed, her breathing steady. But the room wasn't the same. The silence had shifted from tension to awe. Not because someone got thrown, but because someone had stood without shouting, resisted without retaliation. What happened in those 10 seconds held more than choreography. It held the weight of everything Alana had learned about restraint, bias, and perception. Because what Kellen did wasn't just a shove, it was a test. One, he thought he'd win because he believed the myth that quiet girls stay small, that black girls back down or blow up, that someone like Alana wouldn't know how to handle it. But the real lesson wasn't just for Kellen. It was for every student who watched, every teacher who heard about it secondhand, every person who'd misjudged a girl based on volume or skin tone or silence. And now that the videos were out, the world beyond Monroe Central was learning it too. By the end of 6th period, the clip had been posted to 3 Instagram stories and at least 1 TikTok account. The audio synced perfectly with a trending track. Captions were added. "She really flipped him." "Pav, the quiet girl goes Krav Maga." And "Watch her hands, she's trained." By midnight, it had more than 85,000 views. By the weekend, it was over 200,000. But virality came with distortion. Some comments turned Alana into a meme. Others accused her of overreacting. A few demanded Kellen be expelled. A handful called her cold or too calculated. None of them knew the full context. Few seemed interested in it. For Alana, the attention was disorienting. Students stared differently. Some stepped out of her way. Others whispered, as if proximity might trigger something. What none of them realized was that Alana wasn't interested in fame. She hadn't stood up to prove a point or earn applause. She'd stood because someone crossed a line. Because she knew what happened the last time she stayed silent. Her instructors taught her that 90% of self-defense was awareness, knowing when something was about to go wrong. And the other 10%? That was for when talking no longer worked. Kellen Marks wasn't the first to test her limits, but he might be the last to underestimate her in front of a crowd. Later, as she sat in the front office waiting for her mom, Alana thought about what her brother Malik once told her. The hardest part isn't the move. It's choosing to stay in control when they expect you to break. She didn't break, and the world kept watching. By the time 4th period ended, Monroe Central High wasn't the same school. The clip of Kellen Marks hitting the floor was everywhere. It spread faster than most school rumors ever could cut into short loops, paired with trending music, and captioned like it was part of a dance challenge. But what really made it viral wasn't just the move, it was Alana Brooks's composure. Her posture, her stillness, her voice. That's what people kept pointing out in the comments. She never even raised her tone. Dude got humbled by a whisper. No fists, no drama, just precision. By lunch the next day, over 250,000 people had seen it. Not just students, adults, strangers. Even local news had picked up the story, though they didn't name the students involved. Just a viral altercation caught on camera. But behind the views and likes was a storm brewing. Alana sat quietly in the assistant principal's office, across from Kellen. The chairs were spaced a few feet apart, but the emotional distance was wider. Mr. Ellison, the assistant principal, looked between them. He wasn't used to these kinds of conversation zones with this much national attention wrapped around a local event. Kellen went first. "She flipped me," he said. "In front of everyone. I barely touched her." Alana didn't interrupt. She didn't even shift. "She pushed me?" Kellen added, his voice rising a little. "I told him not to touch me," she said softly. "He did it again. I stopped it." Mr. Ellison looked at both students. He had already seen the footage. He'd read the comments. He'd been emailed by parents and staff, and even someone claiming to be a journalist. "You weren't hurt?" he asked Kellen. "No," Kellen muttered. "And you?" he asked Alana. "I'm fine." Ellison nodded, rubbing his temples. "This shouldn't have happened," he said. "But I'm also aware this could have ended very differently. No one was seriously hurt. That matters." He paused, glancing at a notepad filled with incident reports. "But the way it's been handled online," he continued, "adds weight to something that was already heavy." Alana stayed quiet. The school decided not to suspend either student. Instead, they were kept in separate areas for the day, while the footage was reviewed and parents were contacted. But in the hallways, the verdict had already been cast. Kellen wasn't a villain in the traditional sense. He wasn't the kind to leave bruises or steal backpacks. He was the kind people avoided because he made you feel small with a laugh or a look. That kind of behavior usually went unchecked. Teachers looked the other way. Students tolerated it, until now. Now they saw him as the guy who got dropped by a girl who never raised her voice. The shift in power was sudden and unsettling. Some students treated Alana like a legend. Others acted like she was radioactive. Teachers didn't know how to respond. One tried to pull her aside to say something supportive, but stopped short of offering actual praise. Another avoided eye contact altogether. The district had no official policy for this kind of situation. Most codes of conduct focused on traditional fight bunches, kicks, blood. But what Alana didn't fit the script. She used no more force than necessary. She didn't escalate. She didn't retaliate. She redirected. And that difference? It mattered. Not just legally, but morally. What made the moment resonate across screens was that it wasn't revenge. It was a boundary. Enforced, not with anger, but control. In self-defense training, instructors often say the most powerful weapon is knowing you don't have to use one. Alana had lived that philosophy in front of hundreds. But that didn't make the aftermath easy. At home, her mom, Chandra, left work early to pick her up. She didn't yell. She didn't panic. She just looked at Alana and asked if she was okay. "I didn't want to hurt him," Alana said, voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't," her mom answered. "But you didn't let him hurt you either." That night, Alana scrolled through the comments. Some were supportive, others cruel. A few questioned if she was dangerous. Some argued that she'd embarrassed a boy who didn't deserve it. And even though most supported her, Alana didn't feel victorious. Because the truth was, she wasn't trying to win. She was trying to be left alone. And now, she was the center of attention. That kind of spotlight can be a trap, especially for girls like her. Black girls who break expectations often end up under harsher scrutiny. If she stayed quiet, she was seen as cold. If she responded, she was accused of seeking fame. There was no safe middle. By Friday morning, the school felt different. The same kids who used to ignore her now gave small nods in the hall. A few whispered her name as she passed. Some looked at her like she was a superhero. Others, like she was dangerous. And Kellen? He didn't show up. The rumor was that he told the office he felt unsafe, which struck some students as ironic. But that's how these things go. When power flips, those who used to hold it often play the victim. Near the vending machines, two of Kellen's friends approached her, not aggressively, but with energy that felt wrong. One leaned in and said, "You made him look soft." Alana met his eyes. Then maybe he shouldn't push people who ask nicely. Neither had a reply. They turned away. But the message was clear. This wasn't just about one shove. It was about pride, perception, and control. And for some, watching a girl take the upper hand quietly, efficiently, was more threatening than any punch. Later that afternoon, Mr. Ellison called her back into the office. He wasn't angry. He looked tired. "I spoke with Kellen's parents," he said. "There's talk of a transfer. Nothing final. But they're considering it." Alana stayed quiet. "You're not in trouble," he added. "But I want to make sure you're okay here, that you feel safe." "I've always felt safe," she said. "It's other people who didn't expect me to be." He nodded, not quite sure what to say next. Because there was no policy for what she'd done. No handbook page for the kid who stood up without striking back, who drew a line and made it stick. And even as the videos kept spreading, the real story wasn't what happened in those 10 seconds. It was everything that came after. The Monday after the video went viral, Monroe Central High reopened its doors like nothing had happened. But the energy inside the school halls said otherwise. Kellen Marks came back. No formal announcement, no extra security. He just walked through the front gate like it was any other school day. Except this time, the swagger was gone. His shoulders didn't sit as high. His steps weren't as loud. People still looked, but not the same way. They looked like they'd just watched the most confident kid in school fall off his pedestal. The usual nods and half smiles that followed him had been replaced with curiosity and whispers. He wasn't feared. He was being studied. Alana Brooks noticed. Not because she was looking for it, but because her classmates had changed their tone too. Some gave her more space in the hallway. A few stopped her to say they'd seen the video, some with admiration, some with awkward praise, others just curious about how she'd stayed so calm. She answered few of them. The moment had passed. It had been real, but it was over. She wasn't looking to relive it, and she certainly wasn't chasing any spotlight. That Friday afternoon, after the last bell rang, she was heading toward the back gate with her earbuds in, planning to catch her usual bus. The sun was still high, the concrete shimmered. Her backpack was light, her steps steady. Then she saw him. Kellen was standing by the fence, near the bushes where upperclassmen sometimes lingered. Alone. No friends, no backup. Just him. Alana paused and took one earbud out. She didn't flinch, didn't tense up. Just kept her eyes open and her posture neutral. "I'm not here to start anything," he said quickly, his hands low, palms open. I didn't know how else to say something." She crossed her arms. "You don't have to say anything." "Yeah," he replied. "But I need to." He looked down, then up again, like the words were heavier than he expected. "I messed up," he said. "I let people gas me up, and I thought pushing you would make me look tough." She didn't respond. "I saw the comments, the edits, the clips. It's been brutal, but that's not what really got to me." He exhaled. "It was how you handled it. You didn't get loud. You didn't show off. You just moved. You let me fall, and somehow that hit harder than a punch." Still, she said nothing. "I know I can't take it back," he continued. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just needed to say I was wrong. You didn't deserve that." There was a pause long enough to stretch. Alana looked him in the eye. What she saw wasn't fear. It wasn't shame either. It was something quieter, like someone who had finally realized the world didn't revolve around him. "Thank you for saying that," she said. Her voice was even. He nodded. "That's all." Then he turned and walked away. No dramatic exit. No lingering look. Just gone. Alana watched him go. Then she put her earbud back in and kept walking. It wasn't closure. It wasn't a victory lap. But it was a moment that mattered. Because too often schools don't leave room for redemption. They either punish or ignore. But growth? That part's harder. It doesn't fit into a policy memo, and it rarely makes it into a video clip. What Kellen did wasn't heroic, but it was real. He acknowledged harm without defensiveness. He didn't frame himself as the victim. He didn't center himself in the aftermath. He just owned it and walked away. That meant something. For Alana, it didn't change the past, but it did release some of its weight. Later that night, sitting at the kitchen table folding laundry with her mom, she told the story not to brag, just to process. He apologized, Alana said. Chandra looked up. Did you need him to? No, she replied, but I think he needed to say it. Chandra nodded. People can surprise you. I know. There was a pause. Then Chandra added, You okay? Alana smiled a little. Yeah, I am. What neither of them said but both understood was that strength doesn't just show up in a moment of impact. Sometimes it shows up in what happens after, in the way you carry yourself when the cameras are off, in how you answer someone who used to think they were bigger than you. And for Kellen, that quiet fence-side apology wasn't just about owning what he did. It was about stepping out of a role he'd been playing for too long. For Alana, it meant something else entirely. It meant she could move on. That weekend, Alana Brooks sat on the back steps of her apartment building, the sun slipping low behind the trees, her phone face down beside her. No new clips, no new comments. Just a quiet moment to breathe. The storm had passed or at least moved on. The clip of her flipping Kellen was still circulating, now layered with reaction videos, edits, and overlays of motivational quotes. But none of them captured what mattered most. They didn't see the discipline behind her silence, the years of practice, the choice not to lash out. They captured the act, but not the intent, the spectacle, not the story. In the days since, some students had treated her like a celebrity. Others kept their distance, unsure how to respond to a girl who refused to be defined by the role others expected her to play. But Alana never wanted attention. She wanted space to think, to read, to sit at a lunch table without being tested. And maybe that's what made her response so powerful. She didn't act out of anger. She didn't try to humiliate Kellen. She responded only when the boundary was crossed, and even then, with clarity, not chaos. That's what real strength looks like. In today's schools, stories like Alana's often get lost in policy gray areas. Zero-tolerance rules rarely account for context. Self-defense becomes discipline. Silence becomes suspicion. Girls like her are either seen as too quiet or too confrontational, rarely something in between. But Alana carved her own lane. She didn't let the moment define her. She defined it. And in doing so, she gave others a new framework to understand power. Not the kind built on volume or intimidation, but the kind grounded in self-awareness, control, and dignity. When her mom asked again if she was okay, Alana didn't hesitate. Yeah, she said. I am. Because she knew the truth now. Standing up for yourself doesn't always require noise. Sometimes, it just means refusing to be moved when someone tries to shrink you. Not by swinging harder, but by standing still. And that kind of poise? That changes more than a cafeteria. It shifts the culture. One calm, clear voice at a time.